this year was called Thesis 3. Next year, we're renaming them with some trendy word, like maybe doing
lab, innovation lab,
you know,
thesis.
It's gonna be like, it's gonna be like that. And but I believe that even though that's the case, in some of those workshops, specifically the writing one, from what I've heard, there was some talk about thesis already. Is that correct? Yeah. From Nicole, right? Yeah. I don't really have any idea what goes on in this class. I've never sat in on it. I don't know what happens. The other two classes, from what I've heard, said nothing about thesis, right? Which is how it should be. They're not about thesis anymore. One of them is about UX, one is about graphic design, and writing is about writing. But I think she still forgot, basically, that it's not part of, there is no thesis one anymore, so still giving you exercise to think about it. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's great. You might as well start thinking about it early. Why not? But if you were worried, oh, we're supposed to know more about this than we do, you don't need to be worried. Design to really start at the beginning of your second year. So, this is dumb. What's going on over there?
This is what thesis don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll call it, I think it's actually officially called making and doing. I forget. It had been called 2 and 3. So those are,
I think Nicole and Jennifer both kind of tried to touch on thesis things.
yeah.
But they, in some ways, like Nicole was asking us questions, which prompted this because we're like, we don't know how to answer that.
Like what kind of questions?
Like,
what are you supposed to submit? What are you supposed to create?
what does thesis mean to you?
Yeah, what's the scope of, like, what's the right scope of an idea? Like,
how do you think writing will be a part of your thesis process?
I see.
And Jennifer was very much like, how do you quickly synthesize the research as you iterate through ideas?
So they were asking you that, not trying to tell you.
They were trying to teach us based off of what we wanted to learn. Like, there was a little of both.
Okay.
I think in some ways the questions were a little rhetorical, but not.
So there was nothing in their syllabi about thesis? They were just like, they were asking, like, how does it work? Like, I don't know. Is that what's happening?
yeah, they were like, oh, we're teaching you these fundamentals. Hopefully you can apply it to your thesis. Do you know what your thesis is? Do you know what thesis is? And we're like, and like, okay, well, when you do know, like, apply these fundamentals. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the fundamentals can be, you don't need to know what it is, really. It's to get benefit from the fundamentals, but I can see how it's sort of destabilizing for them to ask you, say, someone's supposed to be telling us. So it's 2 semesters. It used to be called Thesis 2 and 3. Now it'll be called Making and Doing or something of that nature. And at one point it was called Development, I guess. I can share the syllabus for the first one if you want to. If you want me to. This is a general write-up. I mean, you know, the language, is this big enough for you to see back there? The language is sort of general. I think that it will give you some sense, but it doesn't really answer a lot of questions until you start doing it. It's kind of like, all right, we're supposed to apply concepts. Like, it's general. I think most of it is sort of self-evident. But the important part is that in the thesis class, it's really like there aren't specific skills taught. It's assumed that you're learning those skills in other classes and practicing them on your own. Writing, UX, physical computing, blah, blah, blah. In thesis itself, there's no like, here's how you make a thesis. Instead, it's kind of like, well, what do you really care about? And what are you going to do about it? And then you have an entire year to go through and figure that out. So the beginning is a lot of exploration, where you're essentially just trying to figure out what, not only what are you interested in, but what are you really passionate about, and where is an area that you can make a difference. And then after you go through a few rounds of just exploring, essentially throwing out ideas, trying something, finding out maybe I don't care about this, or maybe this is too gigantic, or maybe it's too small, maybe it's not ambitious enough, whatever, then you get into lots of actual prototyping. These are the general core questions. Okay, that highlight just doesn't work. You see my cursor here? I know, look at my little dot right here. Anyway, yeah, I think it's zoomed in. Those are the core questions. What is it? Who is it for? What problem does it solve? How does it work? What's the market landscape if there is one? What's the business model necessary? How does it help people to live better? And what is its impact on society and the world? This part specifically, market landscape and business model, in case you're wondering, I don't really care about that personally. If you do, that's great, develop it. But I think that school is your last chance to do something totally insanely ambitious that doesn't have to adhere to the constraints of the real world. So it needs to be realistic and feasible, but it does not need to be proved as a business model. It doesn't have to be profitable. It doesn't have to be something you figure out how to market. Some people are really into that and they want to get practice for having jobs in the real world. So they, like your entrepreneurial class, they're like, well, I want to make this totally real now. I want to make it have a pitch that I can give to somebody as soon as I graduate. So if you want to do that, that's great. But you shouldn't feel constrained by it. So most people do things that they can prototype and prove can work, but there might be a couple years out in terms of its feasibility for technology or for the economy, for example. That's totally up to you how you want to do that. Some people really do more. Almost everyone does things that are relatively grounded that could exist very, very soon or now. A few people usually do, but by a few I mean maybe 2 or 3. End up doing something that's more speculative, meaning something that might be 10 years out. And that's cool if you want to do that. I think most of you and most of the way this department works tends to be a little more grounded than that. There are departments about speculative design which have their own thing, their own value. I think it's cool, but usually people here that's not what they're doing. But personally, as an instructor, I don't limit. I think whatever you're most into. What's the only important thing really is what you're so passionate about that you will keep working on week after week after week after week for a year, and do the best you can do. And that will only happen if you're really passionate about the subject. So that's kind of the important thing.
It sounds like that's kind of then where it lives in the world, like the market landscape being just like what is the ecosystem around this, like.
Yeah, and also like what else? Part of what you'll do throughout the 2 semesters, there's a whole section where you will essentially do a competitive analysis. Where you'll look at everything else in the world that's like this already. A, to make sure you're not repeating something because you're supposed to be making something unique. B, to make sure that you have learned from what everyone else is doing and identified where a gap is. You know, it's like so and so and so are doing all these things similar. This guy does this, but not this. This guy does that, but not this, blah, blah, blah. But nobody is doing all of these things. Here's the gap. And that's where my thing really proves its viability and value. So a lot of it is about that gap. These are the more grandiose criteria that theoretically you are graded on at the end of the year. I mean, this is what determines in your thesis defense at the end if you were successful or not, if you graduate or not. Again, they're like big words: innovation, meaningfulness, impact, groundedness, viability, story, and aesthetic quality. Most likely, you would be keeping all these things in mind anyway, but they're here because just to remind you of how many different important aspects there are to having a successful thesis, and why it's such a big project. You know, you can't really do it in like the last. In a lot of classes, you like do this, you do that, you project, blah blah, and then you do a final project, and it takes about 3 weeks, and you stay up all night for a while, and then pull it all together. That just doesn't work for thesis. It has to be spread out over a long period. It takes a long time. So it changes a little bit every year. Like I adjust how the class works depending on the students, depending on you. Different groups have different personalities and styles, and sometimes I'll adjust the timing of things, or I'll extend something because it seems like you need to do more of X, or you're already good at Y, or whatever. But essentially, in the first semester, which used to be called Thesis 2 Development, but now will be called something really cool. That will be a lot of exploration in the beginning, and then quick prototyping, just making stuff, just to see, just to learn through making, rather than get overly bogged down in research, which when you have, if you're exploring a topic that has been in the back of your head for years sometimes, you start researching and it's just like a bottomless pit. And that research is very important, but you can go down a rabbit hole. So we encourage you in that first semester to also just be making stuff. It's okay if it's kind of crappy and imperfect. It's just like getting it out there, seeing what works about it, what doesn't. Often it'll help you in the exploration phase, because that phase is so wide open, some people feel lost. They're like, I can do anything. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? And like, it's got to be the absolute most perfect, like most amazing thing, because it's my thesis. But it's, you know, you can't get too worried about that in the beginning. So the lots of prototyping helps with that, not only because it makes you get physical and get out of your head a little bit, but also because you get other ideas from making stuff, as you know already. Like sometimes you're working on a problem for a long time and you're making something. It's only until you physically make it or program it or whatever. And then you're like, oh, I could do this. It gives you another idea. So there's a lot of prototyping in the beginning. I mean, in the first semester, I should say. And the second semester, which is this guy, it has all the same language at the front. Notice basically like the syllabus is the same. It's like you're still working on a thesis. The major difference is that you get a advisor to start helping you think about stuff. That's somebody that you find and choose from the professional realm. It can be a faculty member here if you want, but we encourage you to find people outside the department, and we help you find someone if you haven't identified somebody. That's usually a working professional with some expertise or overlap with what you're interested in. And they will meet with you once per week, just for an hour, and just be like an outside voice, keeping you on track, giving you feedback, challenging you. And as you're making in this second semester, instead of prototyping lots of different ideas, at this point you basically should know what you're doing. And the whole second semester is you doing prototyping multiple versions, but of the same thing. So it's iterating on the same thing instead of trying different approaches. It's like, I know what I'm doing. Now I have to just keep making it, improving it, testing it. So there's a lot of user testing, there's a lot of iteration, and there's a lot of critique and such. And then the last month of the year is, which is what these guys are going through now, is preparing to, how do you communicate that to the world, which is all festival stuff, speaking, presentation, slideshow, talking in front of a group, that kind of stuff.
So do you have to like register your advisor at the department?
Yeah, and they get paid.
Oh,
Yeah, the department very generously pays each advisor $1,000, each one of them, and you all get your own advisor, which is pretty cool.
So do people,
That's really smart.
have people had like multiple advisors? I mean, like maybe not all get paid, but.
No, if you want to find someone else who will advise you and not get paid, you're free to do that. We're not getting paid.
Okay.
However, we do also provide, in much more limited but still helpful fashion, some technical consultants. So people who are doing tech-heavy projects, you might want your advisor let's say you're making, I don't know, give me some dream. You're making some solar powered city, and so you need an advisor who understands sustainable energy and urban design and government policy or whatever. So you find someone from that realm. But you also are trying to actually build solar panels and make some interface. And you like, I need someone to help you with that too. But you don't want to choose an advisor who only knows the tech stuff because they can't advise on the big picture. And the person who advises on the big picture doesn't know anything about the tech stuff. So we recognize that that's the case for some people, and we have a much smaller but still significant budget for technical consultants who we bring in on a case-by-case basis depending on what you need. Usually it's like a bunch of students need some physical computing help, some other students need some app development help or whatever. It's different every year. And then we'll get someone who will come in for a few hours a couple times in the semester and just have like open office hours to help you with technical stuff. The last thing that you do, and that these guys are doing now, while they're honing their presentation, is making this process book. And you don't have to worry about that at all until your second semester next year, but I'll tell you about it now. It's basically a process book, that's what it sounds like. It's a nice looking document that shows everything you went through to get to your thesis. And we make that easier for you by having every assignment starting from the beginning of the year, you have to post on your blog in a section made just for thesis. So every week you're doing assignments and you're posting the assignment, but also like what you're thinking, what went wrong, what worked, what didn't, and all that. And at the end of the year, that helps you a lot because you can pull just copy and paste from lots of that content and just format it nicely and figure out how to tell your whole story and how you got to where you got.
So you print a book.
Yeah, in the last few years, students have requested, some students have wanted to do it as a website, so we allow that. I prefer it as a book because I just think it's cool and it makes you feel good. And it's just impressive, just to kind of, someone's in your studio or your office or whatever, and you're just like, yeah, I did all that. But if you want to make a web version only, you can do that. You just need to export it as a PDF where you can archive it. You can see, I don't want to get into this now, so you don't need to worry about it yet. But when the semester starts, you'll get these milestones about when all these different things are due. We don't need to get into that now, but it's in there. It kind of looks like that. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Why is it vibrating? Oh, from the AC system. Yeah, so what other questions can I answer?
Do we have one less class next semester than we do this year?
How many do you have now?
5?
15 credits a semester.
5 concepts.
I don't think that it's like, you would think I would know this, I don't really pay any attention, but do the second years have 5 classes? They don't have 5 classes, they have 4. Don't they?
I don't.
Yeah, because thesis I think is considered a double credit.
Do you meet twice a week?
No. But it's long.
Oh.
It's very long.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I did it this year was total insanity, and I don't know if I'm going to do it again. But the class was split into 2 sections, but it was useful for everyone to meet together. So instead of having 2 sections on different days, we just did it together. So in previous years, the class was like 5.5 hours long, and with a long break in between. Then everyone started crying and moaning. So then we split it up again into last year, or this current year, into 2 different sections. And then everyone started crying and moaning that they were always with the same people, and they wanted feedback from everybody, blah, blah, blah. So then I came up with this tour de force, which is a
randomizer.
Staggered this is split into 3 sections, but some meeting in the morning and some meeting in the afternoon, but in alternating groups so that you were always with different people. But I had to stay here for 6 hours, but nobody, you only had to stay for either 2 hours or 4 hours roughly, or 3.5 hours. And then when there were big first day of class, mid-semester crit, and final crit, everyone would meet together. So I was always here the whole time, but everyone else could come at different times. So we might do that again. We'll play it later.
But it's always on the same day?
Yeah, it's over, yeah. Over the same day.
Just for like, if we're going to do internships or whatever, it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, the class will be, however it is, it'll always be on the same day.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's a defense. Like, what? So what's the structure of like the final deliverables? It's like a defense, a presentation, and
yeah, the final deliverables are an actual prototype, which may or may not be technically functional, but it looks like, it feels like an actual thing. For some of you, that will mean actually working. For some of you, that won't be important. It'll just look like it works, and you'll have like simulated click-throughs or videos showing how it might actually function. So an actual prototype, a final presentation at a festival, which is 7 minutes long, that you're about to see in a few weeks. And a process book, which documents your entire year of work. And the thesis defense, which is a meeting that you are, by design, not allowed to know anything about until you get in there. Essentially, it's like you talking about your work again in front of a panel, which is Liz and myself and your advisor.
or you just say we're not supposed to know.
Well, that part you know about, but what gets asked you don't know. Basically, you present your work and then we ask you a lot of questions.
By ourselves.
By yourself, yeah.
What kind of deliverables would be expected if you do?
Let's go back to really want class.
Well, it's not that different. I mean, you may not have a prototype that you feel, but you'll have a system of some kind. So you'll have just however you can present that in the most effective way. It could be a giant poster, it could be a website, it could be a set of guidelines. Presumably, it would include lots of like user walkthroughs and stories to make whoever's listening understand how does the service work, how does does it work. So yeah, it would really be up to you the exact way you document it, but the basic essence is that you will need to make something that clearly communicates how every part of it functions.
If there's someone you want there for feedback, or still looks as it's like the defense is very different from the presentation. It's more intricate. If you're looking for feedback from somebody else, is the student allowed to invite other people to participate in the critique?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know if it could just be like your friend, but
right, like because he's point, like if you had someone else advising in a different way, you had like the technical person working.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, the more I'm always happy to have other critics in the room. Why not? Yeah. Everyone likes having outside feedback. So if that person is also willing to sit through everyone else's presentation, then sure.
Oh, the thesis critiques defenses are in front of the whole class?
I thought you meant for one of the big.
No, I meant for the defense.
Oh, for the defense.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. For the defense, I don't think that they would be there. No.
Yes.
But they're welcome to come to your final presentation the week before. You basically just want them to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
So they don't need to be at the defense. They can just come see your final presentation the last day of class,
Okay.
which outside critics are invited to. They're welcome to come to that. And they can also, of course, come to the festival. But the defense is like where you get grilled.
So was that the last presentation yesterday? That was the last presentation?
Yeah.
And then when is the defense? It's after the last day of class or before festival?
Yeah, the defense this year is this weekend, Saturday and Sunday all day. So,
and then the prototype, the prototype would be for displaying at like an exhibition.
yeah, so you'll see it when the festival happens. We have a reception this year and last year was here. Other years we've rented out space. It's actually better here. We open up this whole room. We have bartenders, critical, and there's food and blah, blah, blah. And then we set up all these podiums, and each person puts their work on the podium in whatever format they want. So if it's an app, you can have an iPad there. If it's a website, you can have an iMac there. If it's a physical thing, you have a physical thing there. And you can show it however you want. And then there's a little printed piece of paper next to it that says, in case people are wandering by, like, this is what my project is. So everyone who hears you at the festival is invited to come back here. They can look at your thing in more depth. And you can hang around and answer questions or whatever.
This defense, what do you mean by saying defending your product in the real world? What do you mean by this defense?
Who you are, which you do.
Yeah, your identity.
Your value.
Yeah, exactly. Whether you should exist or not.
What makes you think you deserve to be here? No, it's not that. It's really not that bad. But it's just like any critique, except it's just a little more direct.
Okay.
It's like, why did you do this? How can you prove this was the right thing? What made you? Why why is this better than that? And then you're like, it is.
If you don't pass muster, what do you do?
Luckily, there's never been a complete catastrophe. Usually, if that is in danger of happening, we recognize that and warn people in advance, and that has happened. There's been a few people who have needed to be warned multiple times, and they were threatened with not graduating, and which has happened only a couple times, very rare. But, yeah. Generally, if you're doing your work, it's nothing to worry about.
So what do you suggest for the summer that we concentrate on?
So for the summer, I think that you should. It's very there's no set path, but I think you should just do the loosest kind of exploratory brainstorming possible in whatever format is fun for you. So for some of you that might be reading books, some of you hate books, you might want to watch documentaries. Some of you might want to just spend hours on design blogs. I don't know, whatever that allows you to be exposed to lots of other stuff, and then just jotting ideas in sketchpads, just wild ideas that you're interested in. And by ideas, I don't mean you need to start dreaming up, what if I made a thing that does this and this and this? If you have those ideas, you might as well write them down. But it's more like jotting down subjects you're interested in, problems that you see around you that you think someone should do something about, things that you've seen that other people have tried to solve, but they've fallen short, they're missing something. That kind of stuff, and just writing down as much as possible, not worrying too much about, not thinking at all about feasibility, not like, I see this problem, like some huge problem, I don't know, world hunger, and you're like, the UN is doing something about it, but like, it's not working, so I need to develop something. What if I could like, have drones send like, free food everywhere, but that would never work, like, just don't worry about the never work part, just go crazy in the idea part, or the subject part. And yeah, and also, taking like, you don't have to, so a lot of that initial exploration comes from not working, like doing something totally different, meaning like you go hike up a mountain or something, just like clear your mind, do something that's not related to work at school, and see what happens.
Actually reminded me of, someone in the second year said that during the second half of the semester, or the second semester, faculty aren't supposed to give assignments outside of thesis, so you can be totally focused, or something like that. But they found that people were talking about how it's complicated because when you're only doing that, some of your other ideas come from the other assignments you're working on in classes. That's been something. Yeah, I'm just curious about the process for your other classes while you're in thesis.
I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. So it sounds like they're saying they don't want assignments, but they do want assignments.
Kind of.
Well, that's difficult.
I kind of agree. I don't want them, but I might want them, but not really.
I mean, I think that
Just because it was
By the time you get to the end of the second semester, you don't need new ideas. What you need to be doing is iterating on your idea you already have. So I think you might have heard that because so many people took them so long to figure out what their idea was, and that was their own problem, not a problem with the way that the class was set up.
I don't think, if I'm thinking about the student critique, I don't think it was to help them with their thesis, but it was mainly like what you're saying, like clear your mind, like it was a welcome distraction from thinking about thesis so much that you get bogged down in what you're doing. So it's just like, oh, here's this small thing that I can work on that is not tied to thesis, and it's like recalibration for your
like a welcome distraction.
And like helping, if you're stuck on a problem and you're just like constantly going at it, but like I'm in thesis, need to solve this problem. You know, sometimes what you're working on in another class might inform a different angle to solve that problem. And that was, I think, part of the question.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds valuable to me. So I actually didn't know that there were no other assignments at the end. I don't know.
Kind of asking.
I guess I'm sure there's some optimal balance in having a few things to do, but they obviously have to be small enough that you can handle them, but significant enough that they spark something. How will I find out about that? I guess I will need to just ask every instructor of the class what they're doing.
Workshops would be cool. If they weren't homework, but they were in-class workshops.
Yeah. Can we request like speakers or like workshops or stuff that would be beneficial for probably the whole class?
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be done early though. Part of the problem is when students sometimes come up with those things and they're like, there's only X amount of time left. So there's a whole budgetary process that I have nothing to do with that's Liz and Gwen dealing with. And the schedule gets set very far in advance. But the answer is yes, basically. But sometimes it may not be as big as you want. Like you might want someone to come in for a whole day, but that has to be pre-approved a year in advance or whatever. It costs a lot of money. So it might just be someone coming in, for an hour or whatever. But yeah, I think the more of that stuff, the better. So totally, that's welcome to suggest anything or anyone.
You mentioned that like one problem some people face is that they like took too long to pick their idea. What were other like pitfalls, like common pitfalls that could be?
The most common pitfalls are taking too long. Sure, that's part of it. But I think the cause of it is often trying to obsessing and having anxiety about your idea being the perfect thing that sums up your entire graduate school experience. And so keep, like, basically finding what you want, but then keep worrying about whether it's the right thing instead of just diving into it. So it's not even finding the thing, it's just committing to it, basically. That's a big pitfall. What else?
life advice.
What's that?
That sounds like life advice.
That is definitely life advice. Yeah, I mean, in all cases, while you're trying to figure out what to do, you should still be doing something. But it's very easy to keep trying to figure out what to do and then just get paralyzed and be in a spin. Yeah. It happens with lots of stuff. So yeah, it's a big one. For some people, they are too perfectionist. Like they'll make something and it won't really, they'll think it's just not good enough, like the problem is too big, it's too ambitious, and so they'll just throw it out and think they have to pick something else to work on. But really what they should do is just accept that there'll be multiple rounds of failure, but keep working on the same problem. But so people are like, it's not good enough, it's never gonna work. I need to pick another idea, another problem, rather. But you don't need to pick another problem, you just need to keep working on that problem.
In terms of thesis advisor selection, what have been examples of like good advisors?
You have to ask the students that. I'm not in those meetings.
Oh,
It's designed to give you your like personal advisor aside from me, because you hear from me every week.
Okay.
So I'm never in those meetings and I don't know. But lots of students, I'm sure, have something to say. You just email the alumni group, hey, who are you, who are the advisors you like? It probably just be, a lot of it is just like personality. Who do you work well with? Whose style do you like in terms of feedback? Who is the right combination of supportive and challenging, whatever. Sometimes it's not even about their expertise so much. It's more just about their vibe.
I guess the advice is also may depend on the project, right? So you don't want an advisor who has nothing to do with the field that you're working on.
Right, yes, definitely. Yeah, you try to find someone very close to that field. It's not required though, but usually that's what makes sense.
Is there any way for us to access the archived process books?
Yeah, you can see them. I just need to think if I want to let you see them yet.
I
But
could pick like the ones you want.
well, I mean, they're all.
Those you might stay up all night reading every single one.
That is true.
I mean, that's the only reason. Not because there's anything hidden or surprising, but just because it's done at the end. In some cases, it can cause a very painful feeling of being overwhelmed. Like, how am I ever going to do all this? When really, you just do it step by step, like anything. So for some of you, you'll just be like, oh, cool, if they did. And for other people, you'll be like, it'll be like a horrifying feeling.
Yeah.
And so that's my only reluctance. Also, in some cases, you might see someone did something similar to what you were interested in, and you might think, oh, I can't do that, someone else did it. So it's often better not to know, even if you find out in the middle. You might just do something way better or different, and we don't want to rule out that possibility. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Sure, I'll let you see them.
Yeah, because I found in college it was very helpful. Sometimes, like our library had like a shelf of past theses.
All right. Well, here, let's do it right now. I just want to make clear that if I do this, I don't think anyone should be looking at this now. I'm only doing it because you're asking. So there's nothing wrong with that. I just mean for all the people who aren't here, I don't want them to say like, oh my God, we're supposed to be like studying this and thinking about this already. You're not.
No one feels that, right? Okay.
You know, Cozy went through every entrepreneurial design project on the Tumblr that Gary has.
2 years. Not ever. 2 years.
What would be, wait a second. Oh. Here we go. All right, what do you want me to do? Share this with the class or what?
Would you guys like this?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
I'd like it, yeah.
And like,
Eric, I'm going to send you start a Slack channel for Thesis. We'll put Eric in that.
Yeah. No one should feel the pressure to read any of this now, or think that if something's been done, you can't do it. Heard that?
Okay.
People watching the recording? Okay.
Will you use my, I don't think this matters. I hardly ever use Slack, but is that what you sent me? No. Live stream.
You should create it as a
No, it is.
private group.
It is.
Okay. Those first years can't know about this.
I'll set up a fake one.
Oh yeah, oh wait, let's create a fake thesis.
What's the,
It's our channel is IX. What is that channel?
SVA-IxD. Yeah, and then in that public thesis channel, we just like
will you
freak out.
invite me with my Gmail address?
I just invited your existing Slack channel name.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that notification yet.
What is the IKEA as a joke?
Sure. Eric's gonna see far worse on our slides.
Oh, yeah, just.
She's getting anxiety for her raunchy use of emoji. Like,
You don't have to hold back, Megan. Well, I didn't see that yet, but
said you joined.
they did. Wait, someone like impersonating my.
Is this Eric joined?
Yeah, there is Eric Bowman. Drawing Thesis 2017, my invitation.
Well, I guess if you invite the person and the person's already in the network, then you automatically join. And
Yeah.
it's an opt-out. You have to like leave the group.
I don't see how to get in here. No. How am I supposed to get in here? Without a password.
Oh,
Oh, your email. The email associated on here says it's your SVA email.
Yeah.
oh.
Do I have to use that one?
No, you can change it. I've been using my Gmail email
Me
on
too.
Slack.
But you
But
have to
you have to
change
log
it in
in
the
as
system.
SVA and then change it.
Right, but I've never made a password for the SVA one. That's what I'm saying. I never got an invite emailed to me. So how would I log
It's
in?
got your picture.
Yeah.
All right, maybe I'm already.
Well, somewhere Wolfie's just like reading.
That's your home address too.
It also has your Skype.
Yeah, and your credit card number.
All right, so teams, where's that other thing? Switch teams. Sign into another team. What do you say, what's it called again?
SVA-IxD.
Is there a prize for best thesis?
It's not like
No.
it.
Yeah.
Best thesis award.
I'm so forgetful.
Is there also a best critic prize?
Nastiest person.
Do we publicly vote with a spreadsheet that's in front of all
I
of
think
us?
we should set maybe the thesis class could be it could be like a survivor where each week someone's voted off.
Oh,
that'd
yeah,
be
each week, like one person.
Where please step forward.
Well-
Like,
Offering TV torches.
Yeah. We have to like take this giant sampan like out of the water and come back on the Hudson River. Contestants, welcome to the next stage of your thesis presentation.
Anyway, it's still not letting me in. I'll try something.
Yeah, we can do this.
If you send it to one of us, we can put it in the thesis.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So what I'm gonna send you is just this document about the process book
Okay.
that has examples, as you can see, of some previous ones. And I'm not gonna send the syllabus yet, I'm gonna edit it over the summer, but I think you got the idea. Okay,
Are there any suggested readings you have for the summer?
no, no, but that's an interesting idea.
How to Write a Thesis by Don Norman. Box.
There is a scholarship or something that you can apply to in your second year from SVA. I forget what it's called.
The Alumni Award.
Yeah, and it's called the Alumni Award, even though you can get it while you're still a student. But I'm not sure what the criteria are, but usually one person from our department wins every year because we're best.
No pressure.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. It's $2,000. What else?
Any more questions about awards?
All right, Cozy, I'm sending this to you. Remind me, what's your email address? My address book's not talking to you.
That's my full name. KOHZHENGYANG. Gmail.
KOHZHANG.
ZHENG. YANG.
Oh, ENG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have to broadcast. Any more questions, guys? No?
Anyone from the Hangout have questions?
Well, the only one was Andrew who was like, I didn't catch that. Did they say the department was going to pay for the advisor? I said yes. And that's
It's
it.
always got
I guess.
Money,
how
money,
many
money.
times do students, how many times have
Andrew's
they
like, I'll be my
been
own advisor.
Yes.
like pivoting from a project? Has it happened that they have an idea, they pivot?
Yes. Yes, that definitely happens. Everyone's different. Some people pivot 0 times. They know from the beginning. Other people pivot 4 times. I mean, we don't encourage it because the longer you can spend on one thing, the better it'll be. But yeah, lots of people do it. In the first semester, you're encouraged to do it. But after that, you're not supposed to anymore. But every once in a while, someone's like, this isn't working, and I have this other brilliant idea of a way to change it.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So the first semester is sort of exploring ideas, right? Just
Yeah, the first half of the first semester is total exploration, where you can try as many different things as you want. Then you start actually prototyping and getting a little more focused in the second half of that semester, but still trying very different approaches, honing in on the idea, but lots of different approaches to the idea. And then all second semester, you should have the idea set, and you should have the approach basically set, but then you're just iterating on that approach to really nail it down.
I saw you laid out those executive summaries yesterday. Is that for like the exhibition?
Yeah, those are called executive summaries. They're just exactly. Yeah.
Does the department help you with your picking or by identifying approaching thesis advisors that you may not be as familiar with?
Yeah, we don't have any system that we probably should for how to approach them. In terms of like how you talk to them, usually it's leave it up to you to figure it out. But we definitely give you lots of help. We have a whole list of every past advisor, and every past advisor is in a document, and their like general fields and contact information, and the students who've had them in the past. You can actually write to alumni if they may or may not answer, saying, "How was that person?"
Yeah.
So that's a resource, but a lot of people just dig around and they find somebody who they think is really cool, and you just write to them. You basically just cold call them, and sometimes they say no, sometimes they say yes.
Now, can we get access to that document with thesis advisors?
Mm-hmm.
Can we check it out?
Right now.
It's like, give us access to everything.
I mean, I guess. Why not? That looks like.
Are we going to be there next week too?
Yeah, our guys, surprise, we're presenting in the thesis festival next week.
I'll walk up on stage like, I'm gonna let you finish.
It seems like there's like a pretty big disparity from people I've spoken to, and even with like an undergraduate doing it, and how involved thesis advisors are and what makes a good thesis advisor. So.
I feel like it's too early to decide thesis
No,
advisor.
I'm not saying that, but like,
Yeah.
as you meet people that, you know, like this summer, let's say you're working on something, it's like the things to think about in terms of who, you know, is it people that have good experiences when they're in New York, or that are part-time as opposed to full-time, because we're asking for potentially a lot of time and energy and support in this.
Yeah, it works. They should be local unless there's some exceptional circumstance. The most perfect famous genius happens to be somewhere else, maybe, but otherwise they should be local.
Yeah, and like the best in the field versus the second or third best is more available. I feel like maybe you want that.
Yeah, you don't. It's as I said before. It's more about their personal dynamic with you. Is more important than their like how well known they are. So it doesn't matter at all. Yeah, and you don't need to pick your advisor until the end of first semester. So you, plenty of time. What else?
Can you share this with us?
You little devil.
There were kids of everyone on it. I'm doing a writing project on people who have thesis. Do we have to have a cybernetic model in the process?
There has to be at least one conversation.
Okay.
Or fourth order.
A fourth order model.
Fourth order.
I'll send that to both as well. Just make sure. I'll just put an email.
It all goes out to everybody. Good sleep.
Okay.
Good sleep. Oh, yeah. That's Nicole's friend.
All right.